All right, I am back here in the shop talking about jigs and the differences between different jigs. Now, I'm going to go through the Missile Jigs lineup, but a lot of these principles are going to be applicable to other jigs. So when I'm talking about the headbanger, I'm talking about headbanger structure type jigs, football type jigs. I mean, like Strike King makes a structure jig. That's this category. Most people just have regular football jigs. That's what this category is going to be. And then we have all the way down here to the little micro jig. So I'm going to start with what is probably the most common. It's the jig that the Missile Jig started with, and that's the mini flip jig right here. Mike Iaconelli, he won the Delaware Elite Series when we had that up there going out of Philly. He won that event using one of the early prototypes of this jig right here. It is as you can see, it's a regular flipping jig, but it's a little smaller profile. And as comparison, this is it's got a fine cut skirt. There's a 4/0 hook in there. But it's not a heavy wire hook. You can see that as compared, this is a normal full size flipping jig skirt. And you can see the difference in the profiles. The skirt is much bigger. This is a big 5/0 hook, heavy shanked hook. You can really put the wood to them on this. This is our flip out, but most regular size flipping jigs have a similar profile. You can see just a much different profile. This is much more of a finesse presentation, but I mean, this is probably the mini flip is the one I probably fish the most. And the term mini flip, you're going to be using 20-pound test, fluorocarbon or monofilament or less. You don't really want to use braided line with this. The hook is not meant for that. It's not going to hold up. It is a VMC hook. It's a very good hook, but it's just a smaller diameter. And then that smaller profile of the skirt with that fine cut skirt, it pulses a lot, gives it a lot of action. It also makes it fall a little bit quicker. It comes in a quarter, 3/8, and a half ounce. And I'm going to use the 1/4 ounce if I'm going to be wanting that real slow fall. If I'm going to be around, let's say, cypress trees post spawn. I don't want this. I don't want that fast fall. I don't want a 1/2 ounce. I want that 1/4 ounce. I want a real light jig. Pitch it over there. Let that thing fall down. It's not going to get hung up, but it's going to have that slower fall, real good. That post spawn, and then 3/8 is probably the best all around. And then the 1/2 ounce, I like fishing quite a bit when I want to fish it a little bit deeper, or I want that bait to actually have a fast fall. And then a lot of times I'll just put a full size D-bomb. I'll cut it down and use it as a trailer. You can do the same thing with a baby D-bomb. You can put all kind of different trailers on the back of that. But that's probably my all-around. You can pitch it, flip it, skip it under docks. I'll cast that mini flip quite a bit as well. So I'll do that with that mini flip. That's kind of like the first option for me most of the time with the jigs. If I want to go to that full-size edition, I showed you the difference between the flip out. This is the flip out. It comes in a 3/8, a 1/2 ounce, which is the 1/2 ounce right here. I have totally worn that one down. You can see there's a gazillion teeth marks on it. Me and my buddy Derek Hudnall, we went and just torched them at this lake in Alabama. There's a lot of good footage of that, and this is the actual jig I was using for that. I took and put twin turbo on there and kind of cut it off, and then I hung that D-bomb chunk on there to make it look kind of like a zoom chunk. A zoom chunk is the standard in jigs, no matter what kind of jig it is. But that full size jig is when you want. There's times when the bass want a bigger, larger profile to be flipped. That is when I'm going to be using that flip out versus the mini flip. And there's no steadfast rule. There's just not. Some places just have bigger bass. Sometimes you want to just kind of weed out the smaller ones and go for the bigger bites. There's times when I feel like you can get more bites on the bigger jig versus even the smaller jig, which almost is counterintuitive. But at some times of the year, they get real territorial and they don't want anything that's big and obtrusive in their area, their territorial. So the bigger the jig, the heavier it is, almost like the better they bite it. You know, this is the 3/4 ounce. That is really good. You can punch that through a lot of nastiness and put it through reeds and stuff like that. But that's the flip out. You know, it's kind of like a standard, you know, flipping type jig, a big heavy out 5/0 VMC hook in that. You want to make sure you get a good hook in whatever jig you're going to be using. And then we move on to the headbanger jig. This is a jig that I worked with Ike on. Ike is a football head jig fanatic. I mean, from day one, he's a jig fanatic, period. But the football jig is something he really, really likes. He has caught a zillion fish on. We use a custom VMC hook here on that. It's a 5/0, and it's got a slight bend down to the point. And most all football jigs have that. The hook point is parallel to the hook shank. This one has a slight bend down, and we designed that to just give them a little better pin. Once you hook up with those fish, once you get the fish hooked up, it's just going to hold on to them a little bit better. It's not an EWG. It's not a O'Shaughnessy bend. It's just a little bend down to the hook point. We did that on purpose. And this jig comes in 1/2 ounce, 3/4, and 1 ounce. That's what most football jigs or structure type jigs come in. This is the big 1 ounce. Got a big twin turbo on the back of it. And the reason that we didn't do a traditional football head is because there's about 400 different models out there that you can get with a football head. You can find whatever hook you want in that football head. You want a 90 degree, you want a 60 degree, you want a 45 degree, you want a recessed eye, you don't want a recessed eye, you want a longer hook or longer skirt, you want a shorter skirt, you want a flatter weed guard angle, you want a steeper weed guard angle. I mean, there's a zillion football head jigs out there. Hell, you can pour your own. There's probably a bunch of different do-it molds just to pour your own football jig. So we wanted to do something different, and we wanted to do something different with a purpose, which is kind of what we do at Missile Baits. Missile Jigs very much the same way. And what happens with this head is it comes through the cover unbelievable. I mean, I can fish this 1/2 ounce on riprap pretty much all day and not get hung up. It is remarkable, and that's the thing that Mike said that the first time he threw on was he could not believe how well that bait comes through cover. I feel like the Strike King structure jig is in that same category. It's got more of that triangular shaped head. And it just comes through cover better. I think that what happens is you don't give the bait a chance to roll, because the majority of the weight is going to be centered towards the bottom, and it doesn't allow that bait to roll over very easy. It wants to stay rolled up. It doesn't want to roll over very easy. Doesn't want to roll it, so it just doesn't get hung up very much. But I like to throw that on more like the 14 to 20 pound test. I throw that probably 16 pound more than anything. I like the Sunline shooter for all of my jig type stuff, but you want to make sure you have a good abrasion resistant line for anytime you're fishing a structure or football jig. Twin turbo is far and away my number one trailer, because that twin turbo, I mean, you just barely move it and those little legs are going to undulate. Plus, they don't have a ton of resistance. And that's important when you throw it out there. You don't want it to take forever to get to the bottom. If you have, a trailer with more resistance, more thump, it's going to take longer to get to the bottom. It's going to cause more resistance. It's going to cause your bait to stay up off the bottom more. And that twin turbo has just a real small diameter to the middle part of it. And that's what I like when I'm fishing that type of a jig. Gives your hook a little better hookup percentage. I'm gonna make a long cast. I'm gonna be fishing this offshore in rocks, in structure, places like that. That's where I'm gonna be throwing the headbanger. Definitely more of a offshore summertime type situation, but also very good in the wintertime, and also can be very good in shallow water as long as you have that hard bottom. You don't want to be throwing. It's not as good in weeds, places like that, but jigs in general aren't as good in weeds to be dragging. You can punch and flip them. Different story. So we're going to move over here to the micro jigs. This is a little Missile Baits, or Missile Jigs micro jig. It's got a little drop crawl on there from Missile, but that little dude is designed to be fished on a spinning rod. There are very few jigs out there on the market that do what this jig does and can do it the way that it does. Designed to be thrown 10 or 12 pound test, really is kind of up to you. I had a rod I designed for Cashin called the micro jig rod, because none of the rods that Cashin had were really perfect for the micro jig. It's kind of hard. You want something with a little bit of a tip, so it's more of a medium action, but it needs to be a fast taper. And I think we nailed that with the micro jig rod. But you're gonna throw that on spinning rod. You can cast it. The regular micro jig comes in a 1/16, 1/8, and a 3/16. If I'm going to be fishing the 1/16, it's going to be around shallow cover or whenever I want that really slow fall. Do not overlook that really slow fall. That is something that can be big in the fall or post spawn certain times of year. Or if I want to be fishing it in, like a river, like the James River or the New River, smallmouth type rivers. Those can be really good because they'll just go down with the current, and the little micro jig is just murder on river smallmouth. I tell you, it is absolutely lights out on those smallmouth. But there was times that even the 3/16 was not heavy enough to get down deep to where I wanted to fish it. So then we came. Mike was pushing me very hard for this as well. Ike and Ellie, that is. And that's the micro football jig. We have this in a 1/4 ounce and a 3/8. A 3/8, you can fish it pretty much as deep as you want to fish it, but the same deal. We upsized the hook. This has got a Gamakatsu number 1 604 is the model jig hook. This has got a 1/0. The one size bigger on that, and we did that because the head's just a little bit bigger. We wanted to give a little bit bigger gap to get a better hookup. But again, fishing it on a spinning rod, 8 or 10 pound test is really the deal. This is PB&J. There's all the matching color drop crawls, but you can throw whatever small little trailer you want on there. The Strike King Ned Bug, it looks good on there. There's other baits that look good on this as well. But this is when you want to be fishing a little bit deeper. He's got more of that traditional football style, and that's why we did that. And it's got a 90-degree hook on it. We did not do the headbanger style design because it does not have a 60-degree bend in the hook. We felt like that the 90-degree hook was key to have on the micro football, and so if we wanted that 90-degree bend, we wanted to go with the traditional football style head. That was the reasoning behind that. Again, a micro skirt on there on both of the micros, and as you can see, this is the mini flip jig, this is the micro jig. You can see the micro is much smaller than even the mini flip, and then when you put them side by side with the that's the flip out. So a huge difference there, and that's why it's designed for a spinning rod. But again, that micro football jig, you can fish it basically as deep as you want to fish it. I'll throw that 1/4 ounce from basically 0 to about 10. Anytime I'm deeper than say 10 to 12 feet of water, I'm probably going to go to that the 3/8. But I can tell you, there's times when you want that little slower fall, you want that 1/4 ounce. So don't just rule out that as far as the depth ranges go. But that 3/8 also can get way down if you're going up north. You're going to be fishing for smallmouth. Hello, smallmouth love these little micro jigs, as I mentioned before, which no matter which one you're fishing with. But that's kind of the differences between all these jigs that we have in Missile Jigs, and kind of all of the jigs out there, with the exception of swim jigs. We don't have a swim jig in the Missile Jigs lineup yet, but again, that's one of the things we're always working on stuff. Hopefully we can have a swim jig out here before too long, but that really kind of covers all the major categories of jigs out there. So I hope you enjoyed. If you have any other questions, hit me up down there in the comments. You have any questions, if you have any crazy creations about unique trailers that I didn't talk about that you use on any of these jigs, please drop it down there in the comments. I want to hear from you. Thanks for watching.